While it is good to identify with our diverse ethnic groups, in national matters, ethnicity leads to widespread exploitation and violence.
It can also lead us to national crises of corruption, poverty, and underdevelopment.
You have a role to play because you are Nigeria, and Nigeria is you.
What must we do?
We must understand, promote, and preserve those values that ensure harmony and respect for one another. You are Nigeria, and Nigeria is you. This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Good morning, viewers. Welcome to the National Orientation Agency River State Dialogue, a weekly social media streaming live of the National Orientation River State, Nigeria. Today we have a very interesting topic titled Flooding Causes, Effects, and Mitigation. To discuss this topic today is no other than the State Director of the National Orientation Agency, Barrister Young AYOTAMUNO.
Yeah, Piers, I greet you.
Welcome, sir.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Sir, in August 2021, NEMA raised an alarm on flooding, saying that 121 local government areas in 27 states and the FCT to expect a high probability of flood risk, and that 302 local government areas are to expect moderate risk of flooding. They also stated that 351 local government area in Nigeria to fall within the low probable flood risk. This was in line with the position of NIMET, Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Sir, flooding does not happen. What are the possible early warning signs?
Well, first, flooding is an unusual situation. Of recent, it is becoming almost like an annual development, and something that an annual occurrence for us, let me put it that way. And talking about flooding, we are talking about a situation where usually dry lands are now submerged by water and overflow of water, and such dry lands are being submerged by water and leading to the destruction of a lot of physical structures, ordinary physical structures. And part of what you witness is that it has some very disastrous consequences. It's actually an abnormal situation. It's something that is both environmental, something that has to do with the geography, changes in geography, and something that impacts on the health of the individual. Something that impacts on the health of the individual. So that is what flooding is. So of recent, we have been experiencing quite a lot of flooding globally. We have had issues, people talking about global warming, climate change, associated with global warming, and these are some of the things that have given rise to the issue of flooding. But talking in terms of early warning signs, the early warning signs are there. One, when global warming is high. Two, when there are signs of rainfall, there are indications that there will be higher rainfall, heavy rainfall than is ordinarily witnessed in previous years and previous times. So ordinarily, you know that definitely that flooding might occur, because the dry land, like I mentioned before when I talked about what flooding is, the dry land that's available might not be able to absorb the water, the heavy rains, and surely and certainly there will be an overflow of water. So when we talk about early warning signs, these are some of the indications that will lead, that indicate some of the indications that show that there might be flooding.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
From your evaluation, did citizens lead to these signs?
Yes, I would say yes to some extent and no also. Some citizens heed to some of these early warning signs. Some of the early warning signs that are given is for people to relocate from where they are. Those who are sitting on floodplains, those who are built on floodplains, they are asked to quickly relocate and look for safer areas, higher grounds. Certainly there are floodplains. Some of these are areas, lowlands. Some of these areas are areas that are very close to the river banks. Definitely when we talk about flooding, which will come as a result also of the fact that some dams, like we had in 2012, that the Lado Dam was opened, and that increased the volume of water that is available. Increase the volume of water that comes into our own dams, and the water saturation generally, on our own lands. So when such things happen, when such things are expected, it's expected that citizens will heed to the warning of the agencies that are seized with the responsibility to give these early warning signs. We are talking about the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, and of recent we are also talking about the Hydrological Agency. The Nigerian Hydrological Agency is now playing a major role in terms of also supporting mutually supportive role between NIMET and the Hydrological Agency that we have. So people are expected to move from where they are to other areas. So these are some of the things that are expected to be done. And then also for other stakeholders, because whether we like it or not, some of these people are residing in local government areas. They are residing in communities, and every community in Nigeria is under the purview of a particular local government area. So part of what is expected is that the local governments and the CDCs, government cannot do it alone. The CDCs, the community development committees, and also the community governance systems that are indigenous to communities, they know where the areas that are floodplains. They know the areas that are susceptible to flood, and so it is expected that they will also do their own part towards making sure that people relocated from those areas to allow the natural flow of water in case there's heavy rainfall, because it's all based on NIMET's prediction.
Thank you, sir. Now, talking about the causes of flooding. What are these causes?
Yes, let me before I go into the causes. So the conclusion is that there are people listening. On the one hand, they heed to it. On the other hand, there are some who may not give any thought to it, not towards taking any action. With the type of flooding that we have in Nigeria generally, we are talking about the river flooding. We are also talking about urban flooding. The river flooding, of course, partly the climate change that I had mentioned earlier also contributes to river flooding, because when the ozone layer is depleted, and when there is high humidity in the atmosphere, certainly you can't rule out the issue of heavier rainfall even at unexpected periods. But thank God that we have NIMET, we have the Hydrology Agency that has scientific methods of predicting these things. So we have that one is natural. Then we have the urban flooding, which is anthropological. Anthropology in the sense that it is man-made. And talking about urban flooding, there is high migration. There's high migration. We can't run away from the fact that there are security issues. So many people who prior to this time live in obscure, remote areas of the states want to come to areas where they can find or take refuge with easy access to security. So there's migration, especially to urban areas. And when there's migration to urban areas, part of what we have experienced is that ordinarily these natural drains, these natural floodplains, that people begin to build on them, and especially in situations where the town planning policy, the urban and town planning policy is weak. So the tendency is to build on such places because, in fact, there's no vacuum with life. People are looking for where to stay, and if they see such floodplains and there's no proper regulation, the tendency is for them to live on such floodplains. So that is also another cause of it. And then people pushing debris into the drains, wastages, pushing them into the drains. So it is really affecting the passage of water. And so once water must find this level, once there's no way, having blocked the natural drainages, once there's no way for the water to let out the water, the tendency is for the water to percolate, and if the land is already saturated with water, it will overflow and begin to enter into areas where ordinarily it wouldn't have occupied. And so there's an overflow and there's submersion of lands, and it has its own very serious consequences.
Thank you very much, sir. Viewers, we will go to some of our correspondents from the local government area where we will actually view and see what get their comments from the local government area. Thank you.
Mr. EZIKWA, UWUMA, for having me this morning. My name is Olu Samson. I am coming from the National Orientation Agency, Port Harcourt, the treasure base of the nation. I am the Community Orientation and Mobilization Officer, Port Harcourt City Local Government, presenting live report on issue concerning drainage, flooding in Port Harcourt City Local Government. As you can see, probably it could be as a result of dropping of refuse in the drainage. That be the cause. With me here is Mr. Kingsley Achagu. Mr. Kingsley, please, what do you have to say about flooding here in Port Harcourt City Local Government?
Good morning, my name is Mr. Kingsley Achagu. Thank you for having me this morning. As you can see, the issue of drainage at the main road here, indeed, Port Harcourt as a whole, is because of the instant dumping of refuse in the drainage. I know the government have been trying their best, but they have to do more this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Good to have you. And then I also thank you for honoring me this morning. Over to you, Mr. EZIKWA, UWUMA, the presenter of NOA Dialogue Program. Thank you.
That was a beautiful one there. Mr. Samson Olo is the Chief Orientation and Mobilization Officer of the Port Harcourt City Local Government area. I'm sure we have actually heard from him, the own aspect of flooding in Port Harcourt City. I will take a break. When we come back,
While it is good to identify with our diverse ethnic groups, in national matters, ethnicity leads to widespread exploitation and violence.
It can also lead us to national crisis of corruption, poverty, and underdevelopment.
You have a role to play because you are Nigeria, and Nigeria is you.
What must we do?
We must understand, promote, and present. Message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
let's also hear from our correspondents from our local government area.
Thank you, Mr. EZIKWA UWUMA, for having me. Good morning, viewers. Good morning, everybody. My name is Blessing Jumbo from Emoha Local Government, speaking to you live. I am the COMO of the agency here in Emoha. With me is Mr. Innocent Chikwem. Mr. Innocent Chikwem, please, we noticed that in recent time there had been flooding, massive flooding in Rivers State. What are the causes and how can government tackle this flooding?
Thank you, Madam. Innocent Chikwem remains my name as an environmentalist, journalist. My experience showed that, for the past time we have been experiencing flooding. Flooding does not just have to come like that. Sometimes when the natural water course has been affected, definitely the water will have to find its course. Hence, it results to covering the entire resident or where people are living, and that's the cause of flooding. And it also caused by construction companies and other building activities carelessly. Then how it can be handled is that government have to come with a holistic measure. Ministry of Work, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Agriculture, and all the rest of the agencies come together and look for a way to finding out the source of the problem and then tackle it through ecological remediation.
Thank you, Mr. Innocent Chikwem. Over to you now, Mr. EZIKWA. Thank you.
Okay, sir, you have heard what the Komo Moha said, and that's Blessing Jumbo. So what's your reaction to it?
Well, I will react quickly to the first clip that the first correspondence report from the field, that is Port Harcourt. He made reference to the fact that the drainages have been blocked. The Rivers State Ministry of Environment, and in fact the UWUMA, that is the Waste Management Agency, they have always had these templates whereby early in the year the gutters are desilted. The gutters are desilted in preparation for the heavy rains. We have a longer season of rainfall here in Rivers State. Even our name, the fact that we have rivers all around us, even depicts that. So when you look at it, we are in the tropical rainforest, and you can't rule out the fact that we will have heavy rain. So what we normally do is to ensure that they are desilted. So, but over this period, with the number of construction jobs that are ongoing at the same time within the city of Port Harcourt, some of these actions may have been disrupted by the construction activities that are ongoing. So they may not have clearly been done. So that is one aspect of it. The second person talked about the fact that construction, he actually talked about construction that is ongoing. I think the construction is for our own benefits, and on the long run, whatever we suffer now, the hardship that we suffer, that on the long run we will reap the rewards, the benefits for it. So the construction, what is expected is that the construction, before constructions are done, they are supposed to be preceded by EIA, that's Environmental Impact Assessment. Yes. And in some areas they also do environmental impact audits. So these two measures are measures that normally precede construction work. And what is expected is that construction companies will take this into consideration before constructions are done. But I don't think that holistically speaking, that is the construction works that have caused the recent flooding. I think mainly the fact that citizens have blocked some of the natural passages for this water. There are floodplains. If you look at some of the creeks that are around us within the city of Port Harcourt, you will also find out that even we as residents, we have not helped matters. It is when there is rainfall that you see residents bringing out refuse that they have kept at their backyards, refuse that they have kept in their homes. They empty them into the drainages, and these have the tendency of blocking the drains that we have. So these are some of the things. So it's like I mentioned before, when you asked what would be the cause, I mentioned the issue of the natural causes and the anthropological. I think it is more of anthropological causes, because it is caused by human and ordinarily we should be able to control these things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. From our messages here we have on our Facebook platform, I can see Mary Akoroma, Chinwe, Opera, Senebo Abie all watching from their end, and of course Banigo Sotonye is also watching. Bridget Demion stated here that the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Environmental Protection Agency, National Emergency Management Agency should collaborate on the issue of mitigation.
Yeah, they have to. Everybody has to, because it's a joint responsibility of all stakeholders. There's nobody that is not affected. The little rains that we saw that caused heavy flooding, everybody, virtually every person was affected. It's not, water must find this level that I had mentioned before. It was not discriminating between government and what is not government. It was not discriminating between the poor and the rich. Everybody was affected. So everybody, every person, communities, stakeholders, government, we all need to collaborate towards making sure that the right things are done.
Okay. And Senebo Abie says that apart from climate change and global warming, floods are also caused by the activities of man, like building on waterways and throwing refuse inside drainages.
Yes, I've mentioned that when I said that in actual facts, even for major projects that we need to do EIA. I've also mentioned here, I have experienced flooding in some parts of River State, and I've seen situations where in River State, it is actually caused by people building on major drains. I've seen situations like that, and certainly I think this should be discouraged.
Okay, thank you. Well, at this moment we'll go on break. When we come back.
Dear compatriots, our country can be as great as we want.
Let us all commit ourselves to its greatness.
We must be willing to set aside our differences, unite and stay as one.
In our expansive landmass, human and material resources, and plurality lies our strength.
Let our challenges lead us to rediscover our common ground, and together, let's find solutions.
This will take some time, so it requires patience, tolerance, and forgiveness from every one of us.
Let all hands come on deck to protect and transform our country.
Let us unite and see each other not as adversaries, but as brothers and sisters.
Together, we can build a better Nigeria for ourselves and for the next generations.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA, with support from Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Welcome back. From Kana local government area, we have Peter Ikabe. It says that Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, as NHHSA, should rise to the responsibility of protecting flood in the country. And also from a system from Peter here, it says panel legislation should be passed for people that dispose wastes on canals and the drainages for deterrence sake. Chinwe Opara says early warning sign is a call for the people to be conscious and take precautionary steps by leaving flood-prone areas, clean drainages, stop the habit of dumping debris into the drain and put a stop to it. Then, of course, we have from Peter Ikebino, Aldous Glasgow said flooding is caused by heavy rainfall, poor drainage opening of the dams, waste disposal, and narrow stream river channels. Flash floods are caused by rapid excessive rainfall that raises water heights. Let's take from Y Brigade Canal Command. It says the Environment Agency should use a range of temporal or demountable flood bearers to provide protection in flood-prone areas.
Well, we have had the comments from watchers, from viewers, and I want to quickly react to a few of them. The first one, which has to do with the issue of legislation. I think we have enough legislations, enough environmental legislations in River State. The issue here is that of enforcement, and that is where we have to encourage the duty bearers, those that are in government, to make sure that they enforce these laws that have been made by the River State House of Assembly, by the Port Harcourt State local government area, and in fact, the local government areas generally. I'm talking about NIMET and Nigerian Hydrological Agency. I've mentioned here that they are also trying their best to live up to expectation. In this context, let us clearly, one of the things that we need regularly is that we should have these early warning signs, and that we should have flood mapping areas that are susceptible to it. And what is more, we have also talked about the expectation that once this flood mapping is made and the announcement made by these organizations that are directly in charge of the responsibilities towards flood checking, that the governments at the different levels should immediately take up those responsibilities. I think the other one has to do with sensitization, which I'm aware that NOA does, but it is not exclusively in this context. It is not exclusively that of NOA. We also expect that other players with expert knowledge and information, those with the scientific information that are doing the predictions, we also expect that they should also come on stream to also contribute to this enlightenment. We have seen organizations like the Nigerian Red Cross. They have also done very well. They have also been very sensitive, very proactive towards the issue of flooding. And they are major stakeholders. They are regional bodies, and even their bodies in the states and at the national levels. They have been very, very active towards trying to mitigate the possible effects of flooding.
All right. Beckinbo Williams mentioned human error in most cases, because he sees it as a cause, as one of the causes of flooding and lack of regular sanitation exercise. He also said individuals have to take responsibility to avoid flooding, and government should regulate and sensitize the population.
Yes, I agree with that. My only disagreement with it is when we talk about that it has to be a particular day in the month set aside for sanitation. Those are vestiges of military administration, where we used to have a particular day. Now we are talking about democracy. We expect that with the number of years that the military tried to ensure that this habit of environmental cleanliness is imbibed, that Nigerians would have had sufficient time to imbibe this quality, and it shouldn't be anybody trying to cajole us, anybody trying to push us towards cleaning our environment. It should be natural with us. It should be a daily thing for us to clean our environment and make them safe, make them healthy, and make them habitable. I think these are some of the things that we need to imbibe. We don't, as human beings, as Nigerians, we don't expect that anybody should begin to enforce these things, push us towards enforcing them. And this is where the NOA, because one of our cardinal objectives is to ensure that we discuss with citizens towards imbibing towards imbibing clean environmental culture. And I think we will continue, we will rehearse it, continue towards making sure that citizens imbibe these habits and culture.
Yes, Charity Godchild from Eleme says people should be cautioned not to be pouring their refuse on the said drainage system during a rainy season or dry season, as the case may be. And of course, from the onset, let people work with their conscience at all times. God bless NOA. And of course, we have Samuel Archibald, who says that with rivers and creeks around the state, we need not to suffer from flooding. There should be good drainage system channeled into the rivers and creeks, and flooding will be a thing of the past.
Yeah, I've mentioned the issue, of course, of imposition of fines. I've mentioned that it goes to the issue of enforcement by the various regulatory agencies, even the ensuring that we have the regular drainages, clean and readily available drainages, also has to do with the issue of regulatory agencies. Governments, especially the town planning unit, has to ensure that nobody is building on these natural drains. And we even need new ones, looking at the migration into the cities. Let me not create the impression that this flooding is occurring in the cities alone, because flooding also affects the farmlands and the rural areas. The farmlands, in fact, they have been part of the people that have been most affected. Farmlands have been most affected, livelihoods have been most affected. So even at that level, we expect that the local government councils will do the needful towards ensuring that proper drainages are put in place. After all, the issue of drainages are also environment is also part of their function. It's partly their function as stated in the 4th schedule of the Constitution, where their powers are clearly defined. Yes.
So, thank you, State Director. Thank you, our contributors on social media. We actually thank you for the responses you have actually sent, your comments, contributions, and the questions, as the case may be. We actually enjoy every bit of your questions. Sorry, we cannot take all your contributions, as it were. We hope that next time we'll be able to get on to at least attend to all of them. But today, the State Director, sir,
yes.
How can flooding be prevented?
Well, we have to look at the effects. What we think are the effects of this flooding? I've mentioned here that livelihoods are affected. Livelihoods of people, agricultural farmlands are affected. If you have, for us who regularly interact with the people in the rural areas, you will see that in anticipation of heavy flooding this year, that midway into the farming season, and as the crops started to yield, when they have not attained full maturity, that people actually began to remove their crops, the little that have actually propped up. They started removing them, that's harvesting them. That's early harvesting of crops. It is part of the consequence. We have also recorded deaths. In 2012, statistics cited that about 360 persons died and over 2 million people were displaced. In 2018 too, we also find out that a sizable over 150,000 people by statistics were also displaced, and we also recorded some deaths in 2018. 2015 was not also exempted. And so talking about, before we go into mitigation, it is important for us to know the impact of what our activities are causing us in terms of lives, in terms of livelihood. People, the recent flooding that we had, you saw people's cars submerged in water. Even some people were feared dead, even though we did not, we have not gotten the exact statistics of what transpired in terms of human lives. But livelihoods were affected. People couldn't go to work, man hours were affected, and so productivity itself was also affected. People were inconvenienced, they couldn't sleep in their homes. So these are things that are avoidable. And so talking about mitigation, like we have mentioned, talking about mitigation, we have said first the regulators have to do their own part. Who are the regulators? The regulators, we are talking about governments, both at the state and the local government level, especially where some of these natural floodplains have been built upon. They must do everything towards making sure that they are recreated, no matter what it will cost, even if it will mean compensating those people for part of what we may describe as partly negligence on the part of regulation. We also believe that the town planning units of government should also be up and doing, and then those who are supposed to be enforcing some of these laws, because many people who are contributing have said that there ought to be fines. These fines will definitely dissuade people from pouring things into the drains. So we also buy into it that if somebody deliberately, but before you do that, if for instance you say people should not throw dirt on the median, which is of course a very bad habit, we also expect that if you say people should not throw dirt in certain areas where they have been used to, that there should be provision, alternative provision on where they should throw such dirt. Okay. And it becomes the basis. In that case, you have the moral basis to arrest such a person and prosecute him and ensure that he pays the necessary fine. And then for us, somebody here who contributed, I think one mentioned that it is a matter of conscience. We must have ways of disposing this waste, ways of lawfully disposing this waste, and make sure that we don't cause health hazard to other persons. We must engage the different institutions, we must engage the different bodies that we see, of course, waste disposal vehicles every day going about. And we have been told that people are not allowed to dispose waste within a particular period of time. And it is expected that as citizens, it is part of our responsibility to make sure that we honor some of these regulations that have been put in place. Because on the long run, everybody is affected one way or the other. If you are not affected directly, your brother is affected, your mother is affected, everybody is affected one way or the other. So it is important that we do our best. And then NIMET should also regularly inform us. It is important because they assist with the scientific knowledge on how to, or when floods are coming and when floods are going. We expect that we should be having these things timeously, early enough, and not just hearing it, but as citizens also apply it to our own living, so that we can be excused, so that we can be requised from this flood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for being with us on this program today. You know, COVID-19 is real, so we have to take responsibility. And we are hoping that by next week, you will also be with us, stream live with us on this program of the National Orientation Agency University Dialogue. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hence, whether they belong to the young or old, Christian or Muslim, no matter who you are, your hands are powerful. To stop the spread of COVID-19. H. Have your hands washed or sanitized frequently. A. Always cough or sneeze into your elbow. N. No going out without a face mask. D. Distance of at least 2 arms length should be maintained. S. Stay indoors and self-isolate if you feel sick. Hands.